Hello, and thank you for joining me here on So Stitch Checks. I'm Miss Izzy, and today I'm going to be talking about my relationship with death. So, death has been a part of my life for a really long time, basically as long as I can remember it. So, in a more physical way, and with a joke attached, I've been knocked very unconscious a couple times, and when I was found by older relatives, not much older than me, like close to my age, they couldn't find a pulse and they were freaking out. And this has happened 2 or 3 times, and so I usually make the joke that I have at least 6 or 7 lives. I'm not sure it'll be a surprise. Because, 9 lives, cat girl. But in a very real way, death has been in my life since I was really, really young. This is because my grandmother, who died when I was 3, she was around like 40. She died from breast cancer. And it was really impactful because it was right around the same time that my mom and dad broke up. And so, dealing with this death of a family member and being around when my home became broken, it was just a really impactful moment. And when my Nana died, she wanted to be cremated and she wanted to be put at home. So what we did was we scattered her ashes in the yard. And I confirmed with my mom because lately, no matter what I say, no matter who backs me up, everyone says that everything I say is wrong. So I just went and confirmed. And what I remember is true. So we put her ashes in the yard, and so I would go and I would take, the little bags that you put buttons in that are attached. Well, you don't put the buttons in there. They come with buttons, spare buttons for your shirts, your jackets, your dresses. They come with backups. Well, I would take those little bags and I would put grass from the darkest, greenest part of the yard in there. And I would carry it with me. Because to me, it was like carrying Nana with me. Because if we put her in the yard to little me, that was like she was the yard. She was the grass, she was the flowers, she was the 7 trees that circle our house. She was there. She was the nature. She was that home. And so I would put it in the little bag and I would carry it with me until either moisture got to it and it started to look gross and I'd replace it, or when it dried out and was shriveled, then I'd get new grass so that I could carry some with me. And this is just like an early practice of honoring the dead and carrying a part of her with me. As I got older, times were really hard, especially going through dealing with my mom and them in the divorce, and the fact that my mom was dating and we were moving a lot, and I went to different schools, and I didn't really get to make a lot of friends, and I wasn't really allowed to have a lot of people over. So I would be really sad. I would just be really upset all the time. And I remember wishing I would be in the car and I would be like, starlight, star bright, for star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might, have the wish I wish tonight. And I would wish on the stars that I could be with my Nana. Because I think it was one of my aunts. It could have been my mom, but I'm not sure. Someone told me when I was younger that my Nana loved me more than anyone else in the entire world. And to someone who's dealing with all that other stuff, a child who's dealing with all of that, I wanted to be where whoever loved me the most was. And as a child, I wasn't quite aware that I was wishing to die. Because my Nana was, in my mind, she was in heaven. And I was wishing to be with her. And to wish to be in heaven would be to wish to die. And so as a small child, I'm wishing on every star I can to go be with her. And it doesn't strike me until I'm older, the disconnect that this might have created in my mind and the way this might have impacted the way I think of death. And then as I got older, my sister, who died on July 31st, 2012, she died when she was 4. She died the summer before my junior year. She was sick my entire high school freshman and sophomore year, and she was only 4. And that was just a really hard thing to go through, because she was like, I saw her be born. I saw her from the moment she came into this world. And then I had to watch as she deteriorated, going from 2 years old and like a normal person who can do things and exist and be, to being nothing. To being gone. And that was a time when, high development, and I was really sad all the time and really depressed. And I do have depression. And it's not just depression that I'm just going to get over. It's just reoccurring. It's just going to keep coming back. And it's going to keep, it's a constant thing. And it might not help that my mother was bipolar, so this just keeps the cycle going. But dealing with the fact that this was a genetic thing that got her, I had to face as a child who originally thought, oh, I want a dozen children, to have a dozen, just like my papa was a child of a dozen. Going from that to being, I'm afraid to have children because what happens if they get sick like her? What happens if I have to watch them die like her? I can't do it again. Especially if I had to go through the whole process of making and carrying the child and then watching them just go. And there's nothing you can do except make the decision to cut them off. And I have things written down from the things that were happening at the time where, like, my papa would tell people, one of my granddaughters just stopped working. And it's like, it's a really hard time. It's a really scary time. And you don't know what's going on, and you're just helpless. And there's nothing to do about it. It's done. But it's still hard. And it impacts how I look at death, because to me it's like, when she had died, I wasn't allowed to be in the room when they cut her off. She was on all the machines. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't eat. She couldn't move. She used all the tubes. It was just so much. I was sitting outside the door, and no one else really understood what I was doing. But like, as we sat outside, I'm like, yes, I'm like 16, but my thought is she might go through the door. Isn't it like an Irish, like, superstition that you always enter the door, or you exit the door that you entered, so that you don't leave your brain at the door or something? So my thought was she would exit that door no matter what. And so as she died, I went and, like, we were sitting outside waiting on them to give us the news we could come in and say our last goodbyes to the body that no longer had my sister. And I was cleaning the dust off the top of the door, because it wasn't dust, it was pollen, which is really bad for me. As I mentioned, I'm allergic to grass. I'm severely, like, impacted by grass. Like, it causes me to cough ridiculously. I have trouble breathing. I sneeze a god-awful amount, and it's awful. It's dreadful. And allergy medicine, I'm allergic to 2 or 3 kinds, like Zyrtec, I'm allergic to. It makes it harder to breathe. Claritin is a 50-50. Equate and Benadryl I can use, but, like, you can't sneeze if you're in a coma. So, like, at this time, like, I'm sitting outside, and I remember I was wearing this pink and black, like, it's like abstract spidery kind of print almost, but it's just spirals. It's like I'm gonna call it the old lady shirt, but those are so cute. I wore pink specifically, and I still have the shirt, because pink was her favorite color. But I sat outside and I cleaned the dust, the pollen off of the door, off the tops of the little window, like, drawings on the door. And first I started up with just her height, because I didn't want her to have to walk through the dust and through the dirt. And then I realized she might be flying. So I stood up and cleaned the top of the door too, because cleaning is how I relieve anxiety. And when I'm too depressed to clean, I can't relieve that anxiety. And at this time I was depressed, but I was more anxious that she wouldn't be able to leave if it was too dirty, which is like a weird thing to think about. But, like, death has just been such an integral part of like the time period when I was developing, that it's impacted me now today. Like, I still think about like death, like me being super depressed as I am. I've had to go through, like, I have attempted suicide. One major time, that's the only time of real relevance to anyone, and 2 or 3 other times that were like one wrong word from one stranger could have pushed me over the edge, you know? But like, the way I think about it is I've seen so much and experienced so much. Like, someone dies every year, it's nothing new. It almost doesn't affect me because it's like, well, at least they don't have to live here anymore. And of course that ideation, it might be a problem, but it's true. You are moving on to somewhere new, somewhere potentially better. And I've never been afraid of death. I've never been afraid of seeing death or facing death. It's hard, and I want to like be helpful. I want to make someone's life better, or make it so that they don't have to move on, or so that they don't want to move on right away, because I want as much time as I can, but also like I'm not afraid myself. And like now, as I'm older and through my last years in college, I started to recognize different ways that I could honor death. So like actively honoring death, I see something on the side of the road as we drive down the road, and I try to recognize what it is and say, oh no, there's a rabbit, or like, I hope it's happy now, or it's moved on. And I try to think about like the different creatures that I pass, and I try to identify them and give them a moment of thought, because that's all it really takes, is just one moment of reflection. On a larger scale than just like in passing, if I see an animal that is obviously, it passed, and like no one's gonna think about it, no one cares. Say you're traipsing through the woods and you come across a skeleton. The animal's gone, it's become part of the earth, and it's now moving on. And just as I thought with my Nana, like she became the grass. Maybe it's very Lion King of me, you become the grass, and then the antelope eat the grass, and then we eat the antelope. But I want to honor them for longer. And something I do with my spells is that I take a picture of the process, or of something, like the pieces, or of the final product, and I'll save that picture. Because to me, the magic lives on in that image. The magic moves forward and it keeps producing when it's captured forever. Because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if I can save that image and keep it, then I can keep the magic alive. So it's similar when I see an animal that's passed. I might take a little death photography, just a little snapshot, because I want them to know that they're being honored in their death, and they are being remembered, and they are worth something. That even though this probably means very little to them, it means something to me. I know at Carowinds, while standing in line at the, what is it called? It's the one that you are strapped in and you're laying down. Whatever that one is. We were in line, and in line I noticed on the ground there was a baby bird. Well, it wasn't a baby bird, it was, looks like it had just hatched and fallen out of the egg, and it hit the ground. And it was just lying there, and it was dead, of course. I took a small snapshot, just so, like, I don't look at the images. I put them in like a folder with other magic, and it's just like, I want to honor its life and let it know that it does exist forever in this image, and it is immortal here. And I know that it's there. And I want it to know that its life wasn't meaningless, that I know it existed, like I know. Similar with, I found, there's like this fountain that's always broken at my school, and like the one I went to. I've graduated, but I saw a squirrel that had drowned, and it was so sad, and no one was going to be able to clean it out because nobody pays attention to this fountain, and like you can report it but no one does anything. So it's like the poor thing just, it's there. And I took a picture of him and put it in my little folder for like to honor them and just recognize they were here. because there's nothing else you can do when they're already gone, except recognize. I know on Ostara, not this year, but the year before, um, we were just getting back from ritual. And as we were heading for our potluck that we do, I saw a baby bird egg. It was on the ground and it had cracked. It had fallen from the tree above and it had died. And I thought how sad it was that on a day that's supposed to represent new life and new beginnings, that it had ended. But I took the remains of the egg and I gave them a proper burial where I could, and when I have the chance to have a proper burial, I will. If I see a critter like a snake that has been killed by something, there's lots of hawks, and there was a baby snake that was obviously killed by something, but it got away, and I buried it and made sure it had a proper burial here in the park. And it's not a big thing. Maybe I'll leave a couple pieces flowers or a really nice leaf that I just thought was beautiful, and leave that for them just to let them know, hey, this is your spot, this is your grave, I honor you, I recognize you. And that's, I guess, different thing than most people do. In a more philosophical way, especially with my views on religion, I don't really have one particular path that I follow, and I don't have one belief that I follow. And so when I see a different idea or a different ideology, I like to study it. I like to read about all the different ways people can believe and the different ways people can have their faith, because I personally don't think that any one is correct. Omnism, I guess it is. And I feel that by honoring each religion, we're honoring everyone who's passed in the different religions that have existed, and honoring everyone that lives and exists. We're honoring their beliefs, and as they talk about in The Denial of Death, kind of like their immortality project, because you live on through the religion that you practice and study and that you advocate for. And if we can honor them all in little ways, then we can honor everyone. And then everyone can kind of live on in their afterlife, and they won't feel that it was meaningless wherever they go, whatever they do. And those are just the ways that death I see in everyday life, and the way that I've experienced it, and why it's just impacted me in such a huge way. It's maybe something small to someone else, and all of these build up from small moments, but they made me who I am, and they made me appreciate what I see and what I find. And although it's cheeky to say, it's easy to appreciate something when it's gone. And I definitely appreciate what I find and what I see, and I want them to feel honored in their life after death, and I want them to feel taken care of and recognized in their existence if I see them, and just through the ideologies that I see. Those are the different ways, and why I study all the different religions. I don't know. To me, it feels impactful, and to me, it feels like I'm doing something if I'm able to honor them in these little ways. How does death impact you, and how does death visit your life? All right. Bye, you guys. I hope to see you.